I swear I didn't believe it either. How could I? The day we read the will, the room felt like it could burst with how much tension was hanging in the air. Nobody said a word at first. You could hear the ceiling fan groaning with every slow turn. Auntie Grace, Uncle Samuel, and even the cousins who never showed up to family gatherings sat there waiting for one name, just one. But that name wasn't called. It should have been called. Everyone expected it. Kem had been the one looking after Grandpa when he fell sick. She was the one running around the hospital, making sure his meals were right and his medicines were taken on time. But when the lawyer read the will, her name wasn't on it. Not a house, not a piece of land, not even the broken grandfather clock in the corner of Grandpa's sitting room. Nothing. I remember looking at her. She just sat still, staring at the polished wooden table. She didn't cry, not in front of them. Inkem wasn't like that. She always carried herself like nothing could break her. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to how this all started. Our family isn't rich, but we're not poor either. Grandpa owned a lot of land in the village and a few houses in the neighboring township, and most of the family stayed around because they believed they would all pass down to them one day. Ikem never cared for all that. She was different, the kind of person who'd give her last kobo to someone in need, even if it meant she'd go hungry. Years ago, she met this old man by the roadside. His car had broken down, and most people just walked past him. Nkem stopped. She didn't know who he was, but she spent hours helping him get a mechanic and made sure he got home safely. I remember asking her why she bothered. You don't even know him, I said. She just smiled. You don't need to know someone to be kind. Turns out that old man was someone important. Nobody knew it at the time, not even Nkem, but he never forgot her. Fast forward to Grandpa's funeral, and everything changed. The uncles and aunties who had once praised Nkem for taking care of him suddenly started whispering. I overheard Uncle Samuel say, she's not really part of the family. I'll never forget the way Nkem's face dropped when she heard that. She didn't argue, she didn't defend herself. She just kept her head down and kept moving forward. After the will reading, the family started talking about what they would do with what land, who'd move into the main house. Kem left quietly that day. I followed her out. I'm sorry, I said. This isn't fair. She shrugged. Life isn't always fair. A week later, a strange car pulled up in front of our house. I watched from the window as a man in a crisp suit stepped out and knocked on the door. Nkem answered. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the moment she opened the envelope he handed her, tears filled her eyes. She stood there, trembling, her hands clutching the envelope so tightly I thought it might tear. I ran out of the house, my curiosity getting the better of me. What's wrong, Nkem? I asked, glancing at her tear-streaked face. She looked up at me, her lips quivering. It's him. Who? I asked, completely confused. The old man, Mr. Adisa. Do you remember the man whose car had broken down the other day, close to the market square? The one I helped to get a mechanic and ensured he got home safely? I saw him again sitting under the baobab tree. He asked me to help him with a cup of water, which I did. Ever since then, I always helped him carry his things whenever I see him in the market. I vaguely remembered him. He was frail, his voice always soft but kind. Nkem had a habit of bringing him water or helping him carry his things whenever he came to the market. Most people ignored him, but Nkem treated him like he mattered. What about him? I asked, trying to piece it all together. She handed me the letter. My eyes skimmed the neatly written words. Dear Nkem, you may not remember me, but I could never forget you. When others walked past me like I was invisible, you stopped. You shared your time, your kindness, and even your meals with me. I saw how hard you worked, even when no one noticed. I have no family left, no children to pass my legacy to. But I want you to have it. Everything I owned is yours now. The land, the businesses, the house by the sea. It's all for you. I hope this gives you the life you deserve. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Yours truly, Adisa. I blinked, reading the letter again, to make sure I wasn't imagining it. He left you everything. She nodded, still clutching the envelope. I didn't even know he had anything. I thought he was just a lonely old man. But the man in the suit standing next to her confirmed it. Mr. Adisa was a very wealthy man, though he lived simply. His assets include several acres of land, multiple businesses, and the coastal property. The paperwork is already in order. You just need to sign here to accept it. For a moment, Nkem looked like she might refuse. I don't deserve this, she whispered. Of course you do, I said, my voice firm. You were the only one who treated him with respect. You earned this. She signed the papers with shaking hands. The man smiled, handed her a set of keys, and left just as quickly as he'd come. When the news spread, the family was in an uproar. People who had barely spoken to Nkem suddenly started calling her, pretending to care. A few even tried to guilt her into sharing what she'd been given. One evening, Aunt Ifeoma came to visit. Nkem, we're family, she said, her tone syrupy sweet. It's only right to share your blessings. After all, we were there for you when no one else was. I couldn't stay quiet. Were you? I snapped, because I remember how you sat silent during the will reading. I remember how none of you ever helped her. Don't act like you care now. Aunt Ifeoma glared at me, but didn't argue. She knew I was right. Over the next few months, Nkem's life changed completely. She moved into the house by the sea, its windows overlooking waves that sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight. She reopened Mr. Adisa's businesses, providing jobs for people in the community, and she never stopped helping others. But she never forgot where she came from. She stayed humble, her heart as kind as ever. She donated part of her wealth to the local school, ensuring that no child would ever be excluded from an education like she had been. As for the family, they were left to stew in their regret. The main house, once full of their bickering and schemes, now seemed quieter. They had money, but they didn't have the peace or respect that Nkem had earned. Looking back, I realized something important. Life has a way of rewarding those who stay true to themselves, even when the world seems against them. Nkem didn't have power, wealth, or connections, but she had kindness. And in the end, that was worth more than anything money could buy. Moral of the story: kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. You never know how a small act of compassion might come back to you in ways you could never imagine. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments, have you ever witnessed kindness being rewarded in an unexpected way? Let's share some positivity. The end.